Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to another one of 4 StarCraft 2 strategy videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Zerg strategy. Now in this replay, our Zerg player is X-Lord and our Zerg opponent is ATN's Dark Force. So let's go into X-Lord vision here. So again, this is a Zerg strategy, and as you know now, it is a mirror matchup, Zerg versus Zerg. Now what we're going to be looking at is dealing with early Speedling Baneling without having to go Speedling Baneling yourself and actually allowing you to tech up. And we're looking at transitions and kind of part of the mind games that go in place specifically in mirror matchups. Obviously it's these kind of games, these head games go into play for all matchups, but in mirror matchups it's definitely much more important to have to be one step ahead of your opponent, more or less. Because if you do this, you can kind of control the pace of the game, you can control the way the game goes, and if you're in that position, clearly you're in the stronger position because the decisions that you make dictate the outcome of the rest of the game. So essentially what we're going to be looking at is just fending off that early Speedling Baneling push without going Speedling Baneling yourself. We're still going to be getting Speedlings just because they are necessary. Having that threat of running around Speedlings is what's going to keep our opponent a little bit timid early on. Now once they get Banelings out, there's that window where they become really strong against just your Speedlings. And of course you have to keep your Speedlings away from the Banelings because one Baneling can take out a whole mass of Zerglings. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be getting some Spine Crawlers, defending the front of our ramp with some Queens, and fast teching into a Lair. This is going to allow us to get mutas and obviously be in a much stronger position than our opponent who just has Speedlings and Banelings. So the opening build order, what we're seeing here, we got a 14 Extractor and followed that up with a 13 Spawning Pool. Something I've gone into in the past, getting that Extractor first allows you to have exactly enough Vespene gas to get that Speedling upgrade, the Metabolic Boost, as soon as that Spawning Pool comes up, and that's exactly what you're going to see here. Moving forward with our Overlords to do some scouting. Overlord scouting, pretty safe bet early on in the game. Specifically because the only threat that you really have are the Queens, and the Queens aren't likely to stray very far from the creep, so pretty safe. Now the other thing to note is that in Zerg versus Zerg matchup, fast expanding very dangerous, so you're actually pretty safe in actually keeping your Overlord outside near their quick expansion, because it's not very likely that he's going to be dropping anything anytime in the near future. So now that the Spawning Pool is up, like I said, we got that Metabolic Boost right away. That came at 15 supply. Also at 15 we started getting our first Queen. And getting these first batch of Zerglings is going to be very important as well, because you can expect your Zerg opponent to do the same thing, and if you don't have enough forces to deal with what he has, then you're going to be really far behind and in a whole lot of trouble. So I would say get between 6 and 8 Zerglings from the start. That's typical of what you can expect your opponent to do as well. As you can see here, the opponent is pushing out with some, and we're just going to group up as long as we can outnumber him and get a surround on him. For example, right here we have more Zerglings than he does, so he is forced to run away for fear of losing all of his Zerglings for no good reason. Now that he has reinforcements, the numbers are a little bit more even, but unfortunately some of his Zerglings are up here. So we are still in a stronger position in this particular engagement should we push through. Back at our base, you can see exactly what I was talking about. We're going to be teching up very quickly to a Lair. I'm going to just take a quick look down here at this engagement. Pretty even thus far, as you can see. So yeah, teching straight up to a Lair. Now our opponent did see that because of the Zergling scout that he put into our base. And in scouting his base, we're going to see specifically what he's going for. Now as you can see, we did get Metabolic Boost a little bit quicker than he did. And bam, right there. So we see the Baneling's Nest. We know that this is coming. Now, this is the position I was talking about. If we can defend against this Baneling push, we're going to be in a very strong spot. Now, we started teching up to that Lair at 21 supply, basically as soon as we could with our next turn of Vespene after this Metabolic Boost had finished. Also started getting that second Extractor at 21 supply, and that second Queen's going to be coming right now as well. Now you can see moving out with our Speedlings, just testing the waters. We want to see if he's pushing out, and we do in fact see these Banelings coming in. And what you're going to have to do, it's going to work really well on any map that has a choke like this. You're going to want some Spine Crawlers, and you're going to want 2 Queens, and essentially you're going to try to block up the front here. And this timing works out so that you can do this before they push through with any Banelings. You want to get some Spine Crawlers behind these 2 Queens blocking the ramp, and if you can do that, you should be pretty safe. It's just going to take way too many Banelings for them to push through these Queens on top of the Spine Crawlers in the back poking at them. It's really not going to be a good idea for them to try to push through, and you can see he's just trying to put up the Banelings, and we have our second Queen here just in time, forcing him to push back. he would just lose too many banelings in that engagement, and we could of course support by making some more Zerglings. Now this is the point. We can see, we fended off that attack. Let's take full advantage of the fact that we have this fast Lair. As you can see here in the production tab, because he went for those banelings, he literally just didn't have the Vespian gas to get that Lair as quick as we did. So the second that we pushed back this baneling attack, the speedling baneling attack, we immediately dropped the Spire. That Spire did come down at 26 supply. So from this point, this is the point in the game, fending off that early pressure that our opponent kind of took a risk in going for, because he knew we were tech up to a Lair. Since we were able to defend against it with these spine crawlers and these queens blocking off the choke, we're in a very strong position. We're teching up to a Spire, we're going to get Mutalisk on the board. And from that point forward, we pretty much dictate the game, because if in any mirror matchup, the person who gets basically the head start or gets their foot moving in a certain direction before their opponent has a huge advantage. Since we are going to have Mutalisk out before our opponent, there is no way, literally, if we keep up production and they keep up production, they will always be behind in Mutalisk count. Therefore, going for Mutalisk isn't really the best idea. Since they're so far behind, the likely response is for them to get Hydralisks and then eventually get Infestors to kind of stop our Mutalisk in place and then respond by bringing their Hydras in and taking out your Mutalisk. But again, since we have that ability to produce Mutalisk way before they do, we're just in a commanding position with that fact. So they aren't likely to respond with Mutalisk. And if they do, we're going to outnumber them, and we should take out this Mutalisk. So really strong and really important that you kind of take note of that. That if you can get that tech advantage before your opponent, they're likely to respond with some sort of a counter. In this particular example, the Zerg opponent does respond by going for Hydralisks and Infestors, which is a proper response. And in doing that, after we go through with all this Muta harassment, we're going to in turn respond by getting Roaches to counter his Hydralisks and his Festers. So it's a really good way, by getting a tech advantage, to set the pace of the game, and that's precisely what we're going to do. This threat of Mutalisk is just huge for him. Now that we have these on the board, he really can't scout us with Overlords anymore. He's not going to be able to move out of his base without us knowing and having time to prepare. And on top of that, we can be an incredible nuisance by picking off his Overlords, harassing buildings in his base. Basically, Mutalisk, they have such an advantage because they're so fast. They can fly away whenever any threats come and pretty much make it out unscathed, unless he gets a ton of Hydralisks right under us. We're pretty much going to be safe for majority of the time. Obviously, queens can be an issue, but again, using the speed, we can just move out. We can severely delay his expansion now that we have these Mutalisks. So definitely a huge advantage. I think now it's really clear that you can see that in fending off that early baneling push, how much of an advantage we have. And as you can see, we have these Mutalisks, and we're going to be doing some harassment. We're going to be fending him off, stopping any engagements, also trying to prevent him from expanding. But we're only going to go with a few Mutalisks. We don't really need a ton. 5, 6, 7, that's probably the most that you really need to have that threat enough to the fact that he feels like he has to counter. Obviously, you could make more Mutalisks at any point if you choose to, but this is the transition that I discussed earlier, switching into this Roach Warren. Once you start to see Hydralisks on the board, again, we have seen that Hydralisk den, so we know they're coming. If we start to get Roaches, we're going to be in a very strong position again. Again, setting the pace of the game. That's exactly what we're doing here. So moving forward, we do see that these Roaches are coming out. We do see that these Hydralisks are coming out, so we know that our response in Roaches is going to be a good one. Now, as far as actual timing, the Roach Warren did go down at 46 supply. That second hatchery also went down at that point because we're pretty safe to expand. Since we have these Mutalisks on the board, we're pretty safe to expand at this point. And we also started researching that Roach speed as soon as it came up as well. That came down at about 47 supply. The exact numbers aren't as important as just the general idea of the timings. Again, we started off the game, there was that harassment from speedling baneling coming from our opponent. We switched tech quickly into Lair, fended off with those two queens and the spine crawlers, fended off that early push. Then we switched into Mutas, and in seeing our Mutas, he responded with Hydralisks, which is likely what your opponent's going to be doing. Again, because I did mention how if we start off getting Mutas before him, it's going to be almost impossible for him to catch up in Mutalisk count. So he's more likely to go for a Hydra response. And then now that we see this Hydra response, we are then responding with Roaches. So as you can see here, just going to be droning up at this point for a little bit, trying to get some saturation on our expansion. Now once the speed upgrade is coming in, then we're going to start to pump out a few Roaches and push out at that point. But definitely getting that tech advantage is such a huge advantage. Can really, again, set the pace of the game, and if you can be in that position, you pretty much control the way the game moves from that point forward. Again, seeing all those Hydrals now, we know that if we pump out a ton of Roaches, we're going to be able to take them out pretty easily. We do have that speed upgrade finished now, so at that point we can fully take advantage of our Roaches with that speed, and of course that recent upgrade in the Roach range from 3 to 4 from the last patch. That definitely makes Roaches much more effective units, especially since before then Hydralisk had such a range advantage, but now that advantage is cut back just a little bit due to that last patch. So pumping out a bunch of Roaches right now, also going to be, again, droning up, trying to take advantage of the fact that we were able to expand before our opponent. And we know precisely what's going on. Since we have these Mutalisks on the board, we can check any and all expansions. I would, of course, strongly suggest checking here. Obviously, it's not very likely that he would have expanded here. Especially professional players, they don't really go for hidden expansions, but in your own games, I would highly suggest checking all possible expansions, because I definitely know in the lower leagues, lots of players like to try for hidden expansions. It's far too dangerous to actually do in the higher levels of play, because basically any hidden expansions, once your opponent finds them, it's almost impossible for you to defend against any attack that they do against it. So here we go, massing up these Roaches right now, going to be pushing out. Now we have seen that he went so heavy on the Hydras in order to try to respond to those Mutalisks, and again, that was a proper response. It's not like our Zerg opponent here did something that was kind of funky and kind of off keel, because if he didn't get enough Hydras, then we could have easily just continued to mass up Mutalisks. There's nothing that would have stopped us from doing that. We had the tech, we had the Vespian necessary, we had the capability of massing up more Mutalisks, so he was kind of forced in that position. And since he was, we are responding, as you can see, with these Roaches, and not going to be much of a battle here, not much opposition these Hydralisks are going to put against these Roaches, because they are armored. They live far too long against the Hydralisks for them to be effective. And as you can see, our opponent here does have to call a good game. So very good game between these two players. Very interesting strategy, and kind of the mind games, like again, I wanted to cover in these mirror matchups. Opening up with defense against the likely Speedling Baneling, fast teching into that Lair, getting those quick Mutalisks, setting the pace of the game, and then switching to Roaches. Just going to go to that build order real quick one more time. We started off with that 14 Extractor and followed it up with a 13 Spawning Pool, allowing us to get that Speedling upgrade right away. At 15 supply is when we started researching that. Now 15 supply, we also got our Queen. 21 supply, teching straight up into that Lair. Also got that Spine Crawlers around that point to defend against any Baneling push, along with those two Queens blocking up the front of the ramp there. 21 supply is also when we get our second Extractor, because we're going to need quite a bit of gas to support the Spire here. 21 supply coming out again with that second Queen to block off this ramp here. Now at 26 supply is when we did start researching, or building our Spire rather. 46 supply, once we had that threat of those Mutalisks on the board and kind of containing our opponent, we did switch into Roaches, building this Roach Warren at 46 supply. Then right after that at 45 supply, also moving out with this Hatchery, since we're pretty safe to expand once we have Mutalisks on the board. And then at 47 supply, getting that Roach speed, greatly increasing the effectiveness of our Roaches. So once again, guys, this has been Forced StarCraft 2 Strategy. If you guys like our videos and you like what we're doing here, then please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. So again, as you can see, we have these Mutas on the board. He has absolutely nothing to deal with it. Definitely in a commanding position here. At this point, it's just going to be a matter of pushing out against your opponent. They may have a few missile turrets up, maybe a couple Vikings. Again, if they've been teching into the Starport and Banshee tech, they're not going to have enough resources to have any Thors on the board. They may also...